with overnight news from northwest Albuquerque. A motorcyclist was rushed to the hospital after getting trapped under a U-Haul truck. It happened around 2:30 this morning at 98th and Avalon. That's near I-40. Fire crews on the scene tell us a U-Haul driver tried to make a U-turn and did not see the rider. He could not stop in time, and that's when they crashed. Crews had to lift the truck to free the rider.
We're staying on top of the latest in a deadly shooting at an Albuquerque skate park. Police now say at least 4 people fired shots during that fight. 17-year-old Jaquez Lewis was killed and 6 others were injured last weekend at Los Altos skate park near Eubank and Lomas. Police are not sure who fired first, and they haven't identified all of the shooters. They say that people were recording the fight and they're looking for help finding anyone who has those videos.
We checked this morning, and the man accused of taking a 13-year-old girl in Missouri, setting off an Amber Alert, is still in jail after being caught here. The two were stopped by state police yesterday afternoon in a truck on I-40 east of Moriarty. 13-year-old Hannah Kenish was with 55-year-old Raymond Valia. This is video of him just after his arrest. Police say Hannah and Valia met on social media 4 months ago, and Hannah portrayed herself as older. Valia traveled from Texas to Missouri to get Hannah.
I know that in this case, the mother was doing an excellent job with trying to control all the forms of social media, and this is just taking her by shock.
Yeah, he now faces several charges, including kidnapping, and could also face federal charges for taking her across state lines. Valia lived and worked in the Albuquerque area just a few years ago. This morning, the FBI and Albuquerque police are on the hunt for the woman bank robbery suspect who is now on the run. Denise Romero was staying at an Albuquerque halfway house while awaiting trial on a bank robbery charge earlier this month. She left last Wednesday, though, without permission and never came back. She has long hair in her mugshot, but police think she may have shaved her head. Police say Romero robbed the New Mexico Bank and Trust on 4th Street in northwest Albuquerque to get money to bail her boyfriend out of jail. If you see her, you're asked to call the FBI.
New developments in a story that we first brought you yesterday morning on News 13. An alert jogger saved an elderly woman from a house fire in Albuquerque. That jogger saw smoke coming from a home on Zimmerman Northeast just after 6 a.m. yesterday. Authorities say he called 911, then ran into the home and pulled that woman out. She was taken to UNM Hospital with minor burns to her face. Firefighters say the fire started in the heater. People at a gun range witnessed a man take his own life. It happened at the Calibers gun range near Washington and I-40 yesterday. Police say that man rented a gun, went into the range with other shooters watching, and shot himself in the head. Workers tried to save him.
The staff here is actually very highly trained in first aid and rendered aid immediately until the paramedics were able to transport him away.
APD says the man later died at the hospital. They say a suicide note was found in his wallet. His name has not been released.
We turn now to this. A Santa Fe teen accused of violently shaking his 5-week-old baby has been indicted on child abuse charges. 17-year-old Javier Chavez was arrested earlier this month. The baby was hospitalized in critical condition after a family member noticed he was purple and gasping for air. A CT scan then showed the infant had signs of shaken baby syndrome. Chavez said he had taken the baby's 16-year-old mother to school and was overwhelmed with his son's crying. Chavez entered a plea in juvenile court that is the equivalent to a not guilty plea in adult court. The woman found guilty of killing her husband and leaving him in a van at the Sunport is awaiting sentencing. 48-year-old Laura Stelmesic was found guilty in the 2011 stabbing death of her husband, Craig, and 50-year-old Marzette Ferris drove from Prescott, Arizona to Albuquerque with Craig's body in the back of their van. They then left the van at the Sunport. They were both arrested in North Carolina 9 days after Craig's body was found. Ferris was convicted of murder and other charges back in February.
5053 brothers from the Four Corners area could all face charges soon. Federal authorities say they stabbed a man to death because he was dating one of their ex-girlfriends. 36-year-old Maynard Shirley was charged in federal court for murdering Brandon Blue Eyes. His brother, 29-year-old Elijah Shirley, was charged last Wednesday. Authorities say Michael Shirley was just picked up on Thursday. The criminal complaint says the trio forced their way into the 30-year-old victim's home in Fruitland and stabbed him and his father. His father survived that attack. The National Bardo Museum in Tunisia is back open this morning. It's the place where a gunman killed several tourists earlier this month. 22 people were killed in the massacre carried out by extremist gunmen back on the 18th. Sections of the museum were damaged in what's considered to be Tunisia's worst attack on civilians in more than a decade. The museum opened its doors yesterday.
Today is the deadline for diplomats to come up with a deal that would help control Iran's nuclear program. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says there's a long way to go in the negotiations with Switzerland. International leaders say they want Iran to agree to key provisions that would limit its ability to build nuclear weapons. Authorities are still not saying why two men dressed as women tried to enter the National Security Agency's campus in Maryland. A spokesman for the NSA says yesterday an agency officer tried to give a driver of an SUV instructions for leaving the area, but the driver did not listen. He says that's when the driver accelerated towards an NSA police vehicle and refused to stop. An NSA officer fired shots, killing one man in the SUV and injuring the other. The injured man and an officer were both taken to the hospital.
Listen to this. A panhandler is called out by a veteran for wearing a fake uniform, and it was all caught on video.
Show me your veteran's ID card. I don't have one, sir. Well, take off my uniform.
Garrett Goodwin says he saw the man over the weekend in Florida and decided to confront him. He pressed the unidentified panhandler for ID when he saw him wearing it. The panhandler appears to retreat and rethink wearing that outfit. Garrett says if you want to confirm if somebody has served, ask if they're registered with the VA, and if so, they should have a photo ID. He was an Army combat medic from '94 to 2003. Coming up this, thanks 531, it is Holy Week, but a Catholic group says what somebody did to their organization is very unholy. A broken window, a broken ignition, and a pried open steering column, all damaged from a failed attempt to take a car over the weekend from Catholic Charities. It's a nonprofit corporation on Bridge near Atrisco.
We just hope, folks will rethink their behaviors and activities during this season and maybe start afresh come Sunday.
The vandals caused thousands of dollars in damage to the car and also broke into a shed to steal supplies for the organization's Early Learning Center. Catholic Charities says it is planning to move into a new building next door, and they'll look at increasing security there.
We turn out to this morning in Albuquerque. Teen is facing serious charges after police say a lost cell phone busted his entire drug operation at school.
An individual texted that phone that they were looking to get more information from, essentially attempting to conduct a narcotics transaction.
The text message led police to the Rio Rancho High School parking lot. Investigators say that's where they found 18-year-old Guadalupe Camargo's car. But that wasn't all. They say they found 16 grams of marijuana, as well as containers for distribution, an electronic scale, and 3 marijuana grinders and weapons.
Our intent, as well as the intent of the administration of the public schools, to ensure that this is, the most safe and apt for learning environment that our students can be in.
Investigators say Camargo admitted to selling drugs to classmates. Bernalillo County deputies are hoping surveillance footage will help with an investigation into a shoplifting that ended in gunfire. It happened at a car audio store on Rio Bravo in the South Valley Monday afternoon. The store owner chased the shoplifter out of the store. The suspect jumped into a car and fired off a round at the owner. Luckily, he was not hit, but you can see the bullet hole in the side of a trash can there. The suspect was able to get away, but he was empty-handed.
Happening this week, a memorial for the Albuquerque police officer who suddenly died. Officer John Kelly collapsed as fellow APD officers were all getting ready to take part in training last week. His cause of death has not been released. Public memorial service is scheduled now for 11 on Thursday morning at the Albuquerque Convention Center. Officer Kelly will be buried at the National Cemetery in Santa Fe. We've posted information on the services online at KRQE.com. Time's now 5:33. It seems that Governor Susana Martinez has no plans to bring lawmakers back to the Roundhouse for a special session. Lawmakers could not agree on funding $270 million in projects before the session ended earlier this month. They were fighting over how to fund highway projects, and now hundreds of other projects won't get funded either, like new security cameras for APS and improvements to state universities. Yesterday, the governor said calling a special session would be expensive and likely would not have a different outcome.
The state auditor says a New Mexico town was not following the rules when it spent taxpayer money. A state audit on Hatch shows bad choices made by the former village clerk, Jim Schoonover. He's since been fired after he set aside licensing fees from the city-operated MPD that he wanted to use for a Christmas party. Former village mayor Judd Nordyke mishandled money as well when he invested $2 million on a housing development in Las Cruces. State law says it is illegal for any municipality to invest in outside land. The city is now working to sell back that land to get all that money back.
We just had a situation where the appropriate financial controls and management practices just weren't there.
The auditor's office says while village leaders mishandled money, they have not found any criminal wrongdoing.
The state attorney general says there are now new policies in place for hiring attorneys for the state of New Mexico. Hector Balderas says the process of selecting a private lawyer will now be more transparent. This comes after a New York Times article in December showed that more attorneys general were hiring private law firms. The article featured former New Mexico Attorney General Gary King. Private lawyers search public records for potential cases and then approach attorneys general. Balderas says when the case is complex, the attorney's office will hire the best private firm at the best price.
We're going to make sure that all these firms are competitively bid so that taxpayers can see the type of issues that are being addressed.
Balderas says they will make public documents from the bidding process. A group of medical doctors is warning parents this morning about the dangers of using kitchen spoons to give kids medicine. The American Academy of Pediatrics says to use metric measurements on prescriptions, medication labels, and dosing cups when giving kids liquid medication, whether it's over-the-counter or prescription. They say more than 70,000 children end up in the ER because of accidental overdoses.
The first problem with using household spoons is that they're not accurate. The second is parents often confuse using a teaspoon versus a tablespoon. They also confuse what's written on the label, especially the abbreviations for teaspoon and tablespoon and which to use.
The doctors say if you're not sure about how much medicine to give your kids, call your pediatrician.
It's like something out of a movie. A thief is caught on camera stealing millions of dollars worth of diamonds. It happened at a jewelry store in California. Take a look at this video. It shows a thief cutting a hole in the heavy iron of the safe while covering himself with a piece of cardboard. It takes him 3 hours, but he does get through. The owner of the store says the suspect took off with about $4 million worth of jewelry. The suspect was able to take off with the stolen goods, and he did not even trigger the security system once. The store's owner thinks the suspect had help waiting for him right outside.
Listen to this. A woman in California is recovering after an attack with a skateboard. Cell phone video shows a man hitting her with it before she falls to the ground. The attacker continues to hit and kick her while she's lying there. The woman suffered a cracked skull and a broken jaw. Police say the attack was triggered after words had been exchanged with the men.
Very scary.
Yeah, sure is. On Easter week.